Good evening, Professor Leary. Zofia Grzegorzewska, November 8th, Phenomenology and Affect. For this week reading, we had really phenomenological topics about phenomenology and affect. So our reading were based on writing by Maurice Merleau-Ponty, Brian Massumi, and Gregory Sageworth and Melissa Gregg. Let's start with Maurice Merleau-Ponty. According to his book, what is phenomenology? It may seem strange that this question need still be posed a half-century after the first work of Husserl. Yet it is far from being settled. Phenomenology is the study of essences, and accordingly, its treatment of every problem as an attempt to define an essence, the essence of perception, or the essence of consciousness, for example. But phenomenology is also a philosophy which replaces essences in existence, and does not believe that man and the world can be understood, save on the basis of their state of fact. It is a transcendental philosophy which suspends our spontaneous natural affirmation in order to understand them, but it is also a philosophy for which the world is always already there, as an inalienable presence which precedes reflection. The whole effort of phenomenology is to recover this native contact with the world and to give it a last and philosophical status. It is a philosophy intent upon being an exact science, but it is also on account of space, time, and the world as lived. Well, before I even did this video, I needed to take a right and think about it. Before I will do assessment of this week readings. Well, Merleau-Ponty was famous French psychologist, post-World War II psychologist. He focused on the problem of perception and embodiment as a starting point for clarifying the relation between mind and body, the objective world, and experience world, expression and language and art, history, politics, and nature. His work had a consistent recall to in accordance to Descartes, Hegel, Kant, and Marx. If we have to assess the inventory of shimmers by Gregory J. Sageworth and Melissa Gregg, we would have to start with this quote. Quote, affect is in many ways synonymous with force or forces of encounter. And following quote from their book is that trying to understand affect is like trying to do psychoanalysis study of trauma. In their book, both authors said that it is over 300 years after Spinoza's death and his famous work on ethics. But we still cannot assess what affect is. And this is another quote from their work. So, what can affect Terry do? Unquestionably, there has been an increased interest in various manifestations, conceptualizations of affect, as can be found in growing number of essays and books, such as this one, as well as conference teams, special journal issues, symposia, and so forth. But it would be impossible to believe that these diverse readings of affect can somehow be resolved into a tidy picture. Well, can we explain affect in any reasonable way? I mean, to try to think of it, we live this world, we have some kind of meaning. I think that if we have to ask ourselves if we have to be or not to be, or have to answer this question to be, that's because what would be the sense of of being us, being humans, being having those brains that can discover, brains that can learn, brains that can do impossible things. We can do a lot of things with our amazing brains. We just sometimes don't have control over of the effects of our work, of our learning, of things that are happening around us. We can explain really what happens. We will be rather happy with some situations. We will be sad. We will be terrified. At some point, we can't. It's just something that comes with us. It's just like something that our feelings need to express themselves sometimes. And as the Brian Massoni in The Autonomy of Affect states, this famous study on children where they were presented with the story. The first time the story was without any sound effects, without any words, without any podcast. Then second time they were presented with some of the podcast. The same story was presented with some of the podcast, and third time they were presented with full podcast to the story. Well, the finding was phenomenal because the children were very happy with the version that is without any podcast. So I guess they just were able to let their minds put their own words into work. So they could use their own minds. They could tell their own happening, right? They could use their imaginations. In other words, right? And as it comes to I'm sorry, my screen went blank. And if it comes to version with full podcast was not really very popular. And I can see here power of words, power of, of words that sometimes, how am I gonna explain this one? The power of words is really important in our lives. Sometimes if that wasn't for words, we would not could learn, right? We could not learn. I mean, in my post, this week post, I put wrote about examples when I was traveling by 2 times by Boeing 737-800, and first time this plane was given to us as a replacement plane. And when I got on this plane and I look at the information in front of me, it says Boeing 737-800, and I go to very surprised actually fly on this plane that is not supposed to fly. And I told him, I turned to my sister and brother-in-law and I said, we are getting off in this Easter. But they were like, calm down, we're gonna make it. Yes, we made it from Baltimore to Providence, but I was praying all that hour on this plane. And the second time, it was when I was flying over the summer from Warsaw to Amsterdam. And we were on the Boeing 737-800. And when I got on this plane in Warsaw, when I sat next to my son, I go, well, Boeing 737-800, we just want to make it home. So, and we were just getting to land in Amsterdam when over suddenly there was an unexplained motion that happened, and everybody froze. I seen everybody froze. I look around me, and people were just like, "Oh my God, looking at the skies! Oh my God!" And so it was effect to something that happened unexpectedly to the very, very. It was effect of. I want to say traumatic feeling at this point. So I think those readings this week were very interesting, and I know we're gonna have problem to understand those big words and try to put it in plain simple words. It's going to be sometimes not very simple task, but I really, really loved it and found them very interesting. Also, if comes to I want to say phenomenology, just to add to it. I don't know if we can explain and somehow our existence. Some people will refer to God, that we are being created by God. Some people will refer to some scientific theories, the Big Bang theory, or that we're being brought here by aliens. So, well, it's kind of hard to explain our existence, and I will go with God theory to be on the safe side. I'm just kidding, but well, I just want to thank you very much, Professor. It was a good week. Thank you. Have a good night.